I would like to call to order the meeting of the Nantucket Memorial Airport Commission for Tuesday, August 11th, 2020, sorry. As a preliminary matter, I am Daniel Drake, Nantucket Airport Commission Chairman. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. State each member's name. Arthur Gasparo.
Here.
Jeanette Topham.
Here.
Tony Buscarin.
Here.
Commissioner Planzer will not be here by reason of distance. Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Tom Rafter, Airport Manager.
Here.
Noah Carberg, Assistant Manager.
Here.
Lily Sylvia.
Here.
Katie Perales.
Here.
And the anticipated speaker on the agenda is Rich Lasden of McFarland Johnson.
Here.
Thank you. Did I miss anybody? No, all right. Good afternoon. This open meeting of the Nantucket Memorial Airport Commission is being conducted remotely consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you will find posted with the agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely, as long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment in two segments, one following the PFAS discussion and the other during the regular public comment period at the end of the agenda. In order to move things along, we are not going to turn on the chat feature in YouTube until it is time for public comment, and at that time you will have to refresh your YouTube, your computer to see the chat feature when it's opened up. For this meeting, the Nantucket Memorial Airport Commission is convening by video conference via Zoom app and broadcasting on the Town of Nantucket YouTube channel. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I note otherwise. The business meeting ground rules are as follows. As we turn to the first item on the agenda, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in a conversation with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. After members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment as follows. NCTV staff will activate the chat feature on YouTube. Members of the public who have comments or questions can use this feature to communicate with the public body. Instructions are on the town's website. It is important to note, as I've already said, that once the chat feature is activated, members of the public will need to refresh their YouTube webpage in order to access the chat. The chair and/or staff will do their best to address the questions, and comments. Finally, each vote taken on this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. Thank you. Again, the meeting is being audio and video recorded. Are there any comments or questions on the agenda? Mr. Buscarin,
I have none.
Ms. Topham? You're muted, Ms. Topham. You're muted.
I know, sorry. Oh, I'm fine with the agenda. Thank
Mr.
you.
Gasparo? Thank you. Hearing nothing, no comments, the agenda is adopted as presented. We have minutes for July 14th, open meeting, and July 14th, open meeting. The first was at 4:15 p.m. and the second was at 5 p.m. Are there any comments on those draft minutes?
Make a motion to accept the minutes, draft
Thank you,
minutes.
Mr. Gasparo. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Buscarin. How do you vote, Ms. Topham?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Mr. Gasparo?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Then we have 3 warrants to ratify: the June 30th, 2020, the July 22nd, 2020, and the August 5th, 2020. Is there a motion to approve those warrants?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Buscarin. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. How do you vote, Ms. Topham?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Mr. Gasparo?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Actually, I am going to change the order. I'm going to move the election of officers and the assignment of subcommittee members up ahead as item number 3, if it's all right with everybody. Any objection?
Sure.
Are there any nominations for the chair?
Just one comment, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Last time we had held this because of Ms. Plansder's absence. Is that something? Have you discussed that with her?
I have not, but I think last time it was, the circumstances were quite different. That was, in a sense, an involuntary absence. This is a voluntary absence.
Fine with me.
And I think we should just go ahead. Are there any nominations for the chair?
I'll nominate Dan Drake.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any other nominations? How do you vote, Ms. Topham?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Mr. Gasparo?
Aye.
And I'll refrain from voting. Is there a nomination or nominations for vice chair?
I'll nominate Arthur Gasparo.
I'll second.
Are there any other nominations? How do you vote, Ms. Topham?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Mr. Gasparo?
Thank you, and I will abstain.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You have the list of subcommittee assignments from last year. We didn't see any reason to make any changes unless anybody wanted a change. Is everybody happy?
Happy.
Okay.
Yes. Everything's fine.
All right, so we'll move to reappoint the subcommittee members as constituted for the fiscal year 20 to serve in fiscal year 21. That is on long-range planning and policy and airfield policy, facilities maintenance, Mr. Drake, Mr. Gasparo, and Ms. Planzer. Personnel, Mr. Drake, Ms. Topham. On noise, environmental, and energy, Mr. Gasparo and Mr. Buscarin. On service and public relations, Mr. Buscarin and Ms. Topham. And on finance, all. Is there a motion to approve those appointments,
So moved.
assignments? Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. How do you vote, Ms. Topham?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Mr. Gasparo?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Thank you. All right, pending leases and contracts, Mr. Rafter. You're muted.
I have to get used to this, I'm sorry. So we have quite a few tonight. The first is JetBlue. It's their agreement for their seasonal service for $40,586.68 plus landing fees. The next is the United Airlines agreement for $24,666.68 plus landing fees. Delta Airlines lease agreement for $27,547 plus landing fees. The next is still pending, that's Southern, but there was a question about the amount and why it was slightly higher. It's because this year they're going both sterile and non-sterile, or secure and non-secure. Next is a business fee for Ross Retrix. They do the ground handling for JetBlue, that's $1,500. An operating agreement with Reliant Air, $1,500 business fee plus landing fees. The next is a letter of agreement with Verrill Dana LLP, and that would be a sub under our Airport Council of Anderson and Krieger to represent us in the Hertz bankruptcy proceeding. I think that's prudent given the fact that they are going to be representing a number of airports on the Hertz bankruptcy. Next is still pending, and that's the CHA Consulting, which is the OPM for the fuel farm. We have Levangie Electric for $3,119,900, and that's the second part of the security project. The good news with that is that the funding is going to be actually 100% between FAA and state for that. The next is Stantec Consulting. They were the other group that was selected as an on-call engineering firm, as we have with McFarland as well. And that's a 3-year contract. Next, we have a contract amendment with Jacobs Engineering for $220,403. That's a supplemental number 1 for taxiway echo task order. It's related to the environmental permitting efforts that were necessary for taxiway echo. Then we have a contract with McFarland Johnson for $3,500. It's a task order for an independent fee estimate associated with the rare species services for taxiway echo. Another contract or task order with McFarland for $4,400, and that's the ongoing botanical monitoring that's required. The next 3, actually, Dan, I'd like to, I think, take separately. They are all related to the PFAS. And we have them broken out individually on the agenda later in the agenda, if that's okay with you.
Is that all right with everybody?
Yes.
Ms. Topham, you had nodded your head, yes?
Yes.
Mr. Gasparo? Mr.
Yes.
Gasparo?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, we'll do that.
And then the final contract is a task order with McFarland Johnson for $15,000 to conduct the studies to incorporate the South Berm noise apron into the EAEIR, which is actually a separate agenda item, but we can cover either way that you choose.
I'd make a motion to.
Why don't we take that one out and cover it when we get to that agenda item?
Okay, so the last 4 we'll take out and do independently.
The first 3 under 6C and the last one under 7, item 7. Are there any questions on the other?
I have a
Contract?
question, Mr. Drake. Jeanette.
Please.
On our thing, it says that the funding for the Levangie Electric Company is, we're going to put 5%, but Mr. Rafter indicated it's 100% funded.
Yes,
So that changed?
yes.
We've gotten the grant award notice.
Okay, thank you.
And that's part of the CARES Act funding for fiscal year 20.
Sorry about the noise.
I would make a motion to approve the pending license contracts and agreements on Exhibit 1 from the beginning of the list up until the Jacobs Engineering Group, with the MGI contracts to be discussed separately.
Well, there are two McFarland Johnson ones on here. The $3,500 and the $4,400 one, which go along with the others.
We will
Correct.
include those. So we would up until the PFAS contract. So
Right.
ultimately it's the last two or last four. Two of them
Last
are grayed
four.
out on our
Yeah,
Is there a second to Mr. Gasparo's motion to approve all but the last four items on the list of pending leases, contracts, and agreements?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Ms. Topham, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin,
Aye.
Mr. Gasparo?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. All right, good, thank you. The next item is the airport manager's contract. Mr. Rafter has indicated he's not looking for any changes in the contract. I don't have any changes for it. Unless somebody else has something they want to ask about or modify, I'm proposing that we, and we'll entertain a motion, that we approve Mr. Rafter's contract in its present form with just the updated salary. And I don't have that number, but it's something around 168,000, I think. I'll put it in. So we'll put it in. So when you ultimately sign it, it'll be there. And to be effective for 3 years, starting July 1, 2020.
I'll move to approve Tom Rafter's employment contract as stated by our chairman.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. How do you vote, Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Ms. Topham?
Aye.
Mr. Gasparo?
Aye.
Chair votes aye.
thank you.
You're stuck with us, Tom. Thank you. Pending matters, crew quarters development.
There's no change on that item. Again, we're having some funding challenges. We'll get back to that when we can start to see a little bit of the black ink.
Do we want to take it off the agenda going forward?
We could, yeah,
Or do you want- Yeah, okay.
probably better.
Capital approval process, home rule petition, which we've changed from the Town Government Study Committee.
Yes, as you may recall, Article 94 was passed at the annual town meeting. The town clerk is now going to prepare a certified copy of the vote, and town administration will forward to the legislative representatives, and we'll coordinate that with Libby. And as that moves forward, work with our legislators.
All right. Thank you. Any questions? We'll get into the PFAS discussion. I think the first item is probably an update on the funds available. The second item, which will be just a general update. And I believe Mr. Rafter will talk about funds available. Mr. Carberg will talk about just the general update. And then we'll get into the various task orders we talked about.
Yes, also, Dan, I'd like to, at the end, address the comments that were made, or the issue of testing of the firefighters. So first, I would like to thank McFarland Johnson, because we pushed them into a time frame and a lot of work. But in all honesty, I think we got ahead of ourselves. At this point in time, the first thing we're asking for is approval for the chairman to sign a letter to increase the first task order with McFarland Johnson up to the full amount of $963,000. We now have worked with town finance, and that is approved because they received the additional authorization from DOR. However, in that task order, you may recall that it assumed that all homeowners on the west side would have to be provided bottled water And they also assumed that there'd be ongoing support for 12 POET systems. We have some of the results back, a majority of the results back, and it's not looking like we're going to need that much, or I think that was a very conservative estimate. So what I would propose is that we increase that first one up to the full amount, but what you're looking at as the Nobadir Way area sampling, which are, I believe it's 7 wells. I call it to the north, but it's additional west sampling. I believe there's 6 on Nobadir Way and 1 on Evergreen. I'd like to ask the consultant to use the rest of the money that was saved, that would be saved from the first task order, and roll that in kind of as an amendment, understanding that we still have to see where the funding comes out. The bottom line is we have a lot before us here, but we haven't been able to reconcile exactly where we are with regard to the actual results that we have to date. And I'd like to work with the consultant to do that so that we can move forward with all the items that we need to get done. There are some that I think we absolutely need to proceed with, and that is, as I said, the sampling of the 7 wells, 6 on Nobadir Way, 1 on Evergreen. There was some work in that task order, I believe, for the airport gas that we would like to carve out as a separate task order and approve that this evening. The other task orders, the town water main, where we still need to review that, Rich. And again, I appreciate MJ's efforts, and I hope that you'll continue to work with us on that. We definitely want to go forward with it, but we need to, we just got it, and that's no fault of yours. We understand it's been, a very pressing, we've been pushing it for time there. So I think, though, it's prudent that we need to sit down and negotiate and see what actually is going to be done there before we can sign off on a $300,000 or $400,000 task order. The plume identification, excuse me, needs to be done sequentially to the other phases, and I believe that's part of a DEP requirement that we complete some phase 1 efforts before we get into the plume requirement. So I'd like to just put that on as a pending right now. Excuse me, but in order to accomplish, what I'll say is, I think the imminent hazards, as it's known by the consultant, I would like to ask the, and I apologize, Dan, this just came up in discussion this afternoon. I'd like to ask the commission to authorize the chairman to execute necessary contracts for emergency POET systems purchase and installations. The reason I ask for that is because as we get results back, as you know, if it goes over 200, we need to get a POET system in there as soon as possible. We're still in the process of receiving results back, and rather than have to wait to call either a special commission meeting or have a commission meeting, we're simply asking that the chair be authorized to execute the contracts necessary for the procurement. We're still going to have to follow the procurement rules. We are working with DCAM for waivers on some of these, but I think it would expedite it. It's a little bit similar to what we're looking to do with town meeting, in terms of not having to wait a full year. Rather than have to wait a month or call a special meeting, we want to be able to get the imminent hazards addressed with the POET systems.
I didn't sign any contracts. We didn't sign ones for the ones we procured already, to my knowledge. How was that done?
I'd have to ask Noah, but I think some of them were done under a Weston contract, and the other emergencies, I think, were part of this task 1. I don't recall. Noah, do you remember how they were done?
Yeah, so off the top of my head, Dan, the first one for the Thompson House, we self-funded. Following that, we funded an additional 3, I believe, through Weston, 2 or 3, and then the remaining 2 or 3 were under the 714 executed task 1.
So understanding too, Dan, this is a mixture of where we procure the materials and then the services to do the install and things are under some of these other task orders.
Yeah, well, I'm confused, but it's really a procedural matter, so we'll get it straightened out. If we'll get the authorization if the commission's willing, and then go from there.
And so I guess to sum it up, what we're looking for tonight is approval to have the chairman send a letter authorizing the full amount of task 1. We'd like to approve a task order for the airport gas work, and I believe, Rich, I forget the number. Do you know? what that was?
48,000 something.
I'd like to approve that as a separate item, if you will, or a task order. And then I work with the consultant, Rich, and his group to reconcile the budget so that we can then come back with a thoroughly identified, and in addition, take the 7 wells that we're going to be testing out of, or amending task 1 and doing it under that budget. And then the remainder of the work that's being proposed will come back at next month's meeting and after we have the budget reconciled, if that makes any sense.
Well, I'm going to do them by separate motions, I think, just to
Okay.
keep the confusion at a minimum. What do we want to do about the houses, or we talked about this a little bit this morning, the houses that are on town water? Is there any reason why if they test to over 20 parts per trillion, they couldn't immediately be put on town water?
So, and I'm going to look to Noah and Rich to correct me here, but, and I believe you're talking about the ones between Nobodere Way and Evergreen. One, they can be, I think, put on water, and we can do that through the subsequent task order. But if they're testing it over 200, we need to do the poet because it's a time issue. By the time we get to
We
town
can't get them
water,
hooked up in 2 weeks?
I don't believe so, no. So that's why we're asking again, we're asking for the approval of the emergencies if we happen to have that.
Yeah, that's fine, but I would like the commission to sort of discuss the idea of if, it's possible. I don't know if you had a chance to talk to anybody about it, but basically if we don't have to, not offer the poet system as an alternative for the people, certainly up to 200 parts per trillion, but just have them go directly on town water.
I support that position. I don't think it should take more than 2 weeks to get a water connection done. I think you're gonna be able to put a water connection in faster than a poet system if the water is in front of the property at the frontage.
Rich, Mr. Lassen, do you have a reaction to that?
I do, Mr. Chairman. Yes, the water main runs up Evergreen and it runs on Airport Road. It does not run up Nobodere Way, which is sort of a cul-de-sac or whatever we might want to call it. So depending on how far up that street, it would be a longer length of pipe that we have to install. And we have not had that conversation with the water department yet on how fast they can install that water.
So there is not town water directly in front of those houses?
Not from the maps that I've seen from the water department, it doesn't go up Nobodere Way, it does not go up.
Okay, well, if it's an option.
Yep.
Does the commission support going directly onto town water for those houses?
Certainly.
I support that.
I support that.
Mr. Gasparo?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, and the chair supports it as well. So I think if that's the direction we can go, we should.
Perhaps if I may, we don't have the results yet for No Badere Way, but we might want to be looking at a preliminary design of what it would take to just simply stub a line. You know, you've got that bit of open space right in the middle. I mean, it seems you probably could run a single trunk line in there and then, you know, go left and right if you would. I don't know that, you know, they may want to loop. I don't know. I think we have to talk to the water company, but hopefully it could just be, since it's such a short run, if we could start just a preliminary, if we had something roughly sketched, then avoid the expense of the poet systems and the maintenance with the poet systems.
So that's,
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I think the part of that has to do with the bidding requirements on, can we put that out with 3 phone calls, or do we have to publicly bid that? And there's a bid time and a contracting time. I'm not saying it can't be done, but there is a mechanism on how to hire that contractor.
Well, yeah. No, I understand that, and that may make it impossible. It may mean we have to do the poet system, but it just seems crazy to do that. And maybe, again, we could get a waiver. I don't know. But I think we should leave it on the table as an option, since everybody seems to be in favor of it. All right, then I will entertain a motion to direct the chair to sign the letter to McFarland Johnson to increase the amount available for the task order to the full amount of the task order, which is what,
$963,000.
$963,000. Is there such a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Buscarin. Second? Ms. Topham, did you second that?
Second, yes.
Thank you.
Can't
Any
see-
further discussion? How do you vote, Ms. Topham?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Mr. Gasparo?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you. And the second motion I would ask for is a task order to remove or to take out of the proposed task order we received task 2, which is for testing and analysis of groundwater from airport gas at the total cost of about $48,000. Mr. Rafter?
yes, Mr. Chair. It may be, just to stay with task order 1, we also need to amend that to include the 7 wells that will be tested between Evergreen and No Badere Way. If we
I'm
can just get-
sorry, you're talking about the task order that's before us tonight or the task order that's already there?
The one that's there needs to be amended so that they can move that work up into the task order 1 that you just increased to the full amount.
But don't we want the 40, do we want the 48,000 to be part of that, or do we
No,
want?
no, that's not airport gas, the 7 wells.
All right, well, let's deal with airport gas and then we'll move the 7 wells in there too, okay?
Yep.
Is there a motion to create a task order for McFarland Johnson and Weston in the amount of $48,000 to sample the groundwater from the airport?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Ms. Topham, how do you vote? Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Mr. Gasparo?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. All right, the next item for which we need a motion is to include in task order number 1 that was signed, to modify task order number 1, which was signed on, which was approved at the July meeting, to include remediation for the houses on No Badere Way and Evergreen Way.
I don't know that it's remediation, Dan. I think it's simply testing at this point, and we'll come back with the remediation.
Isn't the testing already covered?
I don't believe we've covered that anywhere.
Mr. Chairman, no, the testing was included in this task order. We've already grabbed the samples. We've already
Right.
tested
That's what I
them.
thought, yeah.
But the cost to pay for the testing was in this task order. So
Okay,
now we want to move them into the first task order to pay for them.
Oh,
in
I,
the first task
I
order.
see what you're saying. Okay. All right. So to put the cost of testing in the first task order, I can't remember how much that was. Do you have it there? Mr. Lasden?
I don't off the top of my head. No, I'm sorry.
Well, and again, that's part of the reconciliation. We have to find out if there's.
Yeah, but I think we should put something on it.
Okay.
We'll make it up to.
Looks like it's 20,160 plus 2,400 for the access agreements.
25,000.
Well, then you have reporting, bottled water, site evaluation. Again, I'm just looking at the Weston one, Rich. I don't.
Task
Go ahead, Mr.
one.
Lasden.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. Task one is bottled water and water well test sampling is $79,000.
That's for Nobody Way and Evergreen,
That's correct.
for those 7 parcels.
Yes.
All right. We'll add that function and up to $79,000 to the July task order. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Second.
How do you vote, Ms. Topham? Please unmute.
I did, I thought, aye.
Thank you. Mr. Buscarin,
Aye.
Mr. Gasparo,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. All right, is Mr. Carber going to give us a summary of the results so far?
Yeah, we had initially an update, and then I think there was some late breaking information this afternoon. So I'll let Noah give us a summary of where we are.
All right, and NCTV, why don't you go ahead and turn on the YouTube chat? And reminder to the viewers that if they want to access the chat, they need to refresh the YouTube web page on their computer.
Okay, with your permission, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to share my screen for an updated figure for results for the west side of the airport.
Please do.
Okay, is my screen visible with the west side map?
Yes.
Thank you. So we have late breaking results that Tom mentioned. We have had 2 batches of data that were received. One batch was received on Friday. Another batch was received at around 2:30 p.m. this afternoon. I apologize, my update isn't as polished as I would like it to be, but I think it's important to go out with what we have. The results received were samples for the west side of the airport, as well as continued initial sampling on Matacasham Valley Road. And I'd like to go through in the same format I presented at the subcommittee meeting on, I believe, August 4th. For Matacasham Valley Road, 19 of 22 total wells have been sampled.
Do you have that map that you can share with us?
I don't have the map down for Matacasham Valley Road, but I do have the one for the west side.
Okay, it was one of the ones that was shared with us today. You shared it with us today.
I had drafts. I've been receiving updates with a couple tweaks. I'd be happy to take 15 seconds for me to look.
Please.
Okay, can you see an updated macro figure for the full study area?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to zoom in on Maddox-Shan Valley Road.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So for Maddox-Shan Valley Road, 19 of 22 total wells have been sampled. The updates are that 3 wells were non-detect for PFAS concentrations. 6 wells, PFAS was detectable between non-detect and 20 parts per trillion. In 4 wells, PFAS was detected between 20 parts per trillion and 200 parts per trillion. And in 6 wells, PFAS was detected in excess of 200 parts per trillion. And in case anyone can't see the figure on the map, the green circles are no detect. The yellow circles are detection between no detect and 20 parts per trillion. The red circles are detection between 20 and 200 parts per trillion. And the purple is detection above 200 parts per trillion. We still have 3 wells that have not been sampled. One of these is scheduled to be sampled in August at the request of the homeowner. And 2 residences, the homeowners have remained non-responsive to contact. For
Was there in the latest batch of testing, what was new on Maddox-Shan Valley Road?
New on Maddox-Shan Valley Road were 5 results, 2 being in the non-detect to 20 parts per trillion range, 2 in the 200 to 200 parts per trillion range, and 1 being above 200 parts per trillion.
Okay.
So for the previously mentioned results, there were 3 wells require installation of POET systems. And there are 2 outstanding wells from a previous sampling result that require POET installation, for 5 total, I believe.
Those 2 are in process, right?
Those 2, they're all in process now. We're submitting all of them together with the DCAM waiver. Legal has provided that document to us for our review, and we can have that out shortly. For west of the airport, over 2 sample batch results. I'm going to zoom this in a little bit more. 21 residences over 18 parcels were sampled. 14 of those were non-detect. 6 of those were in the range of non-detect to 20 parts per trillion. And 1 of those was in the range of 20 to 200 parts per trillion. So again, the green circles would be non-detect. The yellow circles would be non-detect, between non-detect and 20 parts per trillion. And the red circle would be between 20 and 200 parts per trillion. And this figure, Dan, and its companion are going up on our website shortly. Weston Solutions, I'm watching the emails come through. They're contacting the individual residents now. This information has been forwarded to Mass DEP as well. And sorry, there's one more relevant piece of information, but it's escaping me.
No, there are a handful of wells that are still, or samples that we're still waiting on, correct?
Correct. The wells shown in green have been sampled, and we're waiting on results in the next 2 weeks. There are a few wells that are shown in white and black circles where we have not, through our consultant, been able to make contact with the owners yet. And in addition to this information on airport property, It hasn't been updated. The consultant sampled hangar 8. Hangar 8 came back in the non-detect to 20 parts per trillion range. It's an unoccupied tenant. It's our own property. We can refuse our own bottled water, but we'll address this appropriately. Can I answer any questions at this time?
Does anybody have any questions? So what's the next step here?
So the POET systems would be the next step for it's for the 5 wells. I believe that's 5 or 6.
What's the next step on the west side?
The next step on the west side is to continue with access agreements. Bottled water has been provided to the 4 residents testing between non-detect and 20 that came through in the Friday batch transmission. Bottled water is in the process of being supplied to the additional residents who tested above 20 parts per trillion. And with the DCAM waiver, we will prioritize residences requiring POET systems. So it would be
There's still what, 4, putting aside the Nobodere Way and Evergreen one, there's still 4 that we don't have results from. That we've been tested, but we don't have results from. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right, Mr. Lasden, this question's for you. What from the, I mean, I'm asking you to put yourself in the shoes of the LSP, and if you'd rather not, that's fine. But what you think from their perspective is the next step in terms of further testing, in terms of anything else that they're going to suggest?
I believe they would want to wait and see all the results before they offer what the next step would be. But they would want to get all the results. And we as and I'll use the term we as the airport, we have to finalize the homes that have been non-responsive. We've talked about this, I believe, at a couple of meetings. There's a letter that the DEP has to help us with on officially sort of finalizing the homes that have been non-responsive.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments on Mr. Carberg's report and Mr. Lasden's remarks? Ms.
I have a
Topham?
question.
Go ahead.
Are the people not there that are unresponsive, or do you know that? Or why are they not responding, I wonder? Do you have any clue?
I do not. I will get you an answer.
I can answer that on behalf of Weston, Jeanette. For the 2 residents on Matacasham Valley Road, they agreed the information was sent to them certified mail. It did reach them. For those 2 residents, they're choosing not to respond.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Before we open it to public comment, Mr. Rafter, do you want to comment on the human side of
Yes.
this?
As the commission knows, there was an article in the last week's newspaper, and there was a comment from the public meeting asking about testing of our firefighters, and we've done some research. There'll be more put on our website, but I'd just like to quote 2 sources with regard to employee testing. It says the CDC does not recommend PFAS testing for anyone at this time because the results have no clinical value for diagnosis and or treatment. That's the first quote. The second quote is from the Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry. And they explicitly state PFAS blood test will not provide information to pinpoint a health problem, nor will it provide information for treatment. So we will continue to monitor this situation, and we will post additional information on the website. But at this time, there appears to be no benefit to testing the employees. So we'll keep an eye on that, though. We are going to be looking into The local fire department is purchasing some new turnout gear. We're trying to get that information so that we can look into what ours is and if we need to replace it.
Any questions for Mr. Rafter, Ms. Topham?
Nope, thank you.
Mr. Buscarin? Mr. Buscarin, do you have any questions?
Not for Mr. Rafter, just back to the next steps that we were discussing. Do you anticipate that we would be having another commission meeting, or, waiting another month, or, how are we how are we as a commission going to sort of stay ahead of this? I'm wondering, as the results are coming back in, and should we strategize a little bit so that we can, react quickly to the results that we get?
Well, with the amended task order, certainly they can take the next step of bottled water. If it turns out that, as we discussed this morning, we've got to sort of reconcile where we are from a money standpoint. We've put aside over almost $1 million to deal with this. And hopefully we can take care of these other issues under that task order. And if we can't, we will have to have a special meeting. But clearly, I think the airport staff has done a good job in keeping us informed of the latest news. And hopefully that will continue. And certainly if anybody has any questions, they should speak up and through Mr. Carberg or Mr. Rafter. And
Dan, if I may, I think Mr. Gasparo, in terms of the immediate, or if there is any immediate issues, the things that we covered tonight, giving the chair the authorization to do the contracts for the poets. We're also looking at a blanket DCAM waiver for any and all poet systems. So we'll expedite the process through that. So if in fact we get results back between now and next meeting that require, being addressed because of a health hazard, we have the tools, I think, now to do that.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm not sure if I recall that you guys took a motion and a vote for you to be able to do the poet contracts.
no, I don't think
spoke
you're
about
right.
it.
I don't think we did. I don't think we did.
Okay.
So we can do that. Why don't we do it now? Is there a motion to authorize the chair to sign contracts for any additional poet systems?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you. Any further comment, discussion? How do you vote, Ms. Topham?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Mr. Gasparo?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you, Ms. Perales. All right. Is there public comment that you can see, Mr.
No.
Gasparo? There's
No.
nothing there?
No.
All right. I'm going to ask NCTV to turn off the public comment for now, and we'll come back to it later when we get there at the end of the agenda. The next item on the agenda is the environmental assessment EA/EIR report, the task order on the noise berm permitting, which was one of the matters we suspended action on under the pending leases and contracts.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, this is for a task order of $15,000 to McFarland Johnson to perform the work necessary for permitting of a noise berm that would be then included in the EA/EIR report. And I think it's prudent that we do this because as we get into in future years, the design of the south apron, it will allow us, should the commission choose to put in a noise berm. If it's not in there, we would have to go back and go through the entire process again. At this point in time, we're looking at something that's a fairly, I don't want to oversimplify it, but essentially reusing the dirt that would be claimed from removing it, where we're going to put the asphalt and then building a berm out of it. But again, I think this is simply just to get it in the EIR, get it permitted, so that as we get further down the road, as we go to design, then we can get in debate about whether we're going to do a berm, a noise wall, what it is, and what the cost may be associated with it, and so on and so forth.
Are there any questions or comments? Mr. Sparrow, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I appreciate the staff taking the time to, put this together. It came, this task order as a result of 2 environmental subcommittee meetings discussing this, and had been recommended by the environmental subcommittee meeting. So I would make a motion to approve the task order.
I'll second.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? How do you vote, Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Ms. Topham?
Aye.
Mr. Gasparo?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. All right. We have 2 grant from Airport Improvement AIP grants. One for security and safety enhancements in the amount of $3,820,461. And the second for the reconstruction of taxiway E and reconstruct and realign stub taxiway A for a total of $19,998,693. Which, and as Mr. Rafter pointed out earlier, these are for 95% of the cost. Are they not? And then the state pays 5, or does it?
The taxiway is 100% FAA. I'm sorry. Yes, you're right. The taxiway, I believe, it includes the sponsors, but not the states. Yes, so it would be 95% FAA and then the 5. Now on the security, it's not an even split like that because of eligibility requirements, but we've been assured that whatever is ineligible in the security, the state will pick up. So it's not a clean 95-5,
Okay.
but the security one.
But they're 100% reimbursed.
Yes.
Is there a motion to accept those 2 grants, AIP 71 and AIP 72?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Buscarin. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Gasparo. Is there further discussion? Ms. Topham? How do you
Aye,
vote?
but I've lost you.
I said, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Buscarin,
Aye.
Mr. Gasparo.
Aye.
Excuse me, I have to get rid of the background noise. I'll be right back. 1 second. I apologize. The next item on the agenda is aircraft policy review for aircraft wet washing and PFAS product ban. Mr. Rafter?
Yes, we'd like to request approval of a policy that's in your packet for aircraft wet washing. Actually, not allowing aircraft wet washing. We have not permitted it for a number of years. And also the ban of PFAS products in washing of airplanes. The rules and regulations that we have are not as specific as we'd like them. And we've been advised by FAA compliance that this is in our best interest to make it a specific policy to not allow wet washing of the aircraft or use of PFAS products.
Are there any comments or questions? Is there a motion to adopt the aircraft wet washing policy and the PFAS product ban?
So moved.
Is there a second? Ms.
Second.
Topham, you're muted.
Again.
You second?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. How do you vote while you're still on?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin,
Aye.
Mr. Gasparo?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Lease payments, abatement and deferments. Mr. Rafter?
Yes, we're still in the process of reviewing potential alternatives to address the restaurant operator's request, and we expect to have something back next month to the commission. We're looking at various scenarios and just want to make sure that they're in agreement with it before we present it to the commission. If I may, Mr. Chairman, too, there's one other financial item that was not on the agenda, but I'd like to at least get on the radar for the commission to start thinking about, and that is the fuel revolver. Due to the pandemic, we had no really way to estimate what the traffic was going to be. And you may recall we lowered the revolver cap to $2 million. As of last week, we're at about 1.6 million in sales and about 870,000 in expenses. So we're most likely going to need to increase the cap and possibly even twice this year. That would require the concurrence of FinCom and Select Board. But it will probably be an item for the October commission meeting. I just wanted to make everybody aware of that. That's kind of a good thing, but it's going to be a procedural issue that we're going to have to do to increase that cap on the fuel revolver.
All right, thank you. Do you want to get into the manager's report?
Sure. So on the project update, we have a CIP meeting scheduled with MassDOT and the FAA for August 28th. We're also working to try to fit in a pre-CIP meeting before that. Security project phase 1, they're finalizing the punch list items. Phase 2 contract was approved earlier. The work is scheduled to begin September, October. We discussed the EAEIR, the fuel farm rehabilitation. We're working to finalize the agreement with the OPM. Taxiway Echo, we have a pre-construction meeting scheduled for September 2nd. They've begun moving some of the materials onto the island. The water main installation, MJ, McFarland Johnson, Wanacombat Water, and NOAA performed the site visit and have developed conceptual layout for the water line. We're also working with legal to begin development to develop the agreements that are necessary for that. On the RFP and bids, as I mentioned, the OPM, we selected them, just finalizing the contract. Stantec you approved earlier, so we have now McFarland Johnson and Stantec as our on-call engineers. Hangar 8 request for expression of interest, you may require we put that out. It was set back a little bit by the COVID, but Mr. Turner has contacted me. He continues to be very interested in developing hangars, and we have asked legal to develop a lease agreement and begin negotiation process with him. The fuel farm IFP should be going out soon, as well as the, again, the POET system bids are due out, I believe. Katie, are they out this week?
Correct. It will be available on Thursday to the public.
On the freight side of the house, the freight in the terminal, the draft term sheet has been updated, is in your packet. We're looking to do this as an interim step and then put it into the minimum standards and make it applicable to all users, but allowing freight to go through the terminal at this time, working directly with Cape Air. And I believe we were looking for the endorsement of the term sheet that is in the packet. If I'm not mistaken, Noah, is that correct?
That's correct.
So that we can finalize that agreement with Cape Air. I don't know if you want to take a vote on that, Mr. Chairman, or how you want to handle that one.
Yeah, I think we should. Is there a motion to approve the agreement with Cape Air on freight?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Second. Are there any questions? How do you vote, Ms. Topham?
Aye.
Mr. Buscaron?
Aye.
Mr. Gasparo?
Aye.
The chair votes aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Continuing on the operations update, on July 25th, the airport hosted the vice president, and he was on island for a campaign event as well as a meeting with the governor. And I have to say that the entire staff did an amazing job. All departments, all units, everybody, it was all hands on deck. It was also probably one of our busiest days year to date. I just can't say enough about them, but a special shout out to Preston and Johnny, their crews. They did an amazing job, dedication. They had to work several hours straight through the weekend, from all day Friday, all day Saturday, all day Sunday, between all the support equipment and things. So I just want to, again, thank them all. I think it was a great job. The FAA certification inspection is still on hold. We have not heard back from when that's going to be rescheduled. Again, I'll go into statistics if you don't have any questions, but just a note on statistics, because of the reduction in the air traffic control tower hours there, they may not be compared 100% to the prior years. So any questions before I do statistics?
No, go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry. Any questions? Ms. Topham? No. Mr. Buscarin?
No.
Mr. Gasparo?
No.
Go
Okay.
ahead. Mr. Rafferty.
The operations were down 59, almost 60% over last June, and year-to-date down 3.5%. GA operations are down 3.4%. Employment's down 83.5. Again, we're getting hurt because of the COVID on the commercial side. Year-to-date was down 16%. Cape Air saw a 68% decrease in employments. United was down 89%. Delta down 86%. JetBlue did not fly in June, but carried 8,955 passengers last year. So that was a big hit. Nantucket Air was down 9%. Tradewinds was up 3%. American was down 74%. In the Washington national market, American was down 79%. In Boston, Cape Air had a 75% decrease. New Bedford was down 66% or 220 passengers. Washington Dulles, United flew the route this year and carried 78 passengers with a 16% load factor. So as opposed to Newark last year, they were doing Washington National. Cape Air White Plain employments were down 83% or 144 passengers. Ironically, the Hyannis market was up. Total was up 6% or 41 passengers. Nantucket Air was down 9%, and Cape Air was up 102 passengers or 785%. LaGuardia service returned on Delta, and they saw 86% decline. Charlotte service on American was down 47%. Vineyard traffic down 13%. This is all not making me real happy and warm and fuzzy here. Jet A gallons for June were down 28.3%, and year-to-date down 6.4%. For July, they were down 14.2%. As I've said before, in the off season, when you get higher percentages, it's not a big deal. When we see these percentages during our peak, that's really hurting us. The avgas was down 46% for June and 15.5% roughly for year-to-date, and July down 34.5%. Freight for June was down 23% and that was over last June. Year-to-date down 10.3%. Noise complaints in June were 12 versus 9 last year. Any questions before we go on to personnel? I'll just go into that. Noah and I received recognition from the town manager for our efforts during the COVID pandemic, but I really think the thanks belongs to our entire staff. The airport continued to operate, turned around quickly, got back in business, got open to the public, took all the necessary action. So again, I think the entire staff did a phenomenal job with that. I have a travel request in to attend the National Airports Conference in Savannah, September 27th through 29th. I'm supposed to be moderating a session, but I'm quite honestly pondering that there's consideration that may even be a virtual seminar. So I'd like to request it, but I'm not sure I really am going to be going or want to go. So
Is there a motion to approve Mr. Rafter's request to attend the National Airports Conference in Savannah?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Buscarin. Any discussion? Ms. Topham?
Not, Yes, on that, but I want to add something that I
Well-
also appreciate all the work that the staff has done and Mr. Rafter. So no questions on that. I vote yes.
Okay. Mr. Buscarin,
Aye.
Mr. Gasparo,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. All right, why don't we turn on the chat again, please? And for the public comment. And are there any commissioners' comments? You made yours already, Ms. Topham, right? Mr. Buscarin, do you have any?
I have no comment.
Mr. Gasparo? You're,
Sorry, yeah, I went reverse. I thought it was. I would add that a comment on the operations is that while there's, fairly drastic reductions in the commercial side of the service, if we look at the Southwest ramp, it's actually still quite strong, only down 3.4%. And I think that what we have to consider is I think Jamie warned us a couple of meetings ago that the overall, financial picture going forward could be problematic. And I understand that with COVID and whatnot, increases in fees may not be very popular, but I think that we have to really start to have a good look at how we're going to maintain balanced budgets and, fiscal health going forward, and how things might need to be adjusted across the different cost centers and revenue generators, where we see the reductions on one side and the other side staying strong. So I hope that for a future meeting, I think that plus we have all the additional expenses with the PFAS that we've been discussing. I really do think that we should revisit the rates and charges and look at how we're going to stay in the black sooner rather than later. Thank you.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I apologize. It came in, I got it, I think, early this morning, and I haven't even had a chance to look at it, and Jamie hasn't done a complete review, but we have the report ending June 30th for last year's fiscal year. Again, initial look at it, it looks positive. It looks like we should end the year with let me see here, about a $1 million surplus. Again, I don't quote me, Jamie's going to refine all these, but the initial projection was a fund balance with the prior retained earnings of 3.5 of about 4.1 million retained earnings, possibly after the end of the last fiscal year there. So I will get that out as soon as Jamie has updated it and had a chance to make sure she scrubbed it. It's scheduled to be presented to the select board next Wednesday. Unfortunately, I'm on vacation, so I don't know if they're going to postpone the enterprise ones, if they're going to do them all at once, or how they're going to handle it. But I will get it out to the commissioners as soon as we have this refined.
I do have a comment. I understand that the FAA has increased their hours earlier and later, I believe. I heard that.
They are up to, I believe, 12 hours a day. I have a meeting tomorrow with the tower chief, and they have increased it for Labor Day weekend as well. So that's good news.
Thank you, Ms. Topham. Did I ask you, Mr. Buscarin, if you had any comments?
You did, and I have no comment. Thank you.
Mr. Gasparo, I asked you as well, right?
Yes.
I just have one. I know that the public is sending questions about town-related issues, including the testing of the town's wells, to Mr. Carberg. And I just want to urge the public to direct those to the town. And there's a town website or there's a town mailbox, which is PFAS, PFAS at Nantucket.gov. Nantucket-ma.gov. That's PFAS@Nantucket-ma.gov. And it would be helpful to our staff if those questions could be directed to directly to the town, because we have a lot of issues that we're dealing with. I actually received a text a few minutes ago from somebody who was asking me about the testing of the town wells. So please direct your inquiries there. Is there any public comment, Mr. Gasparo?
No.
There's no public comment. All right, I ask that it be closed off. And I will entertain a motion to go into executive session
So moved.
under, well, I got to read it all and I don't have it here.
That's why I
Sorry.
can do it.
We'll stipulate to the reading.
I think I can't do that, unfortunately. Sorry.
I have it right here and be happy to do it.
All right, go ahead.
I make a motion to enter into executive session per general law, chapter 30A, section 21A, for purposes of review of the enumerated executive session minutes and possible release. For clause 3, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation regarding the Gatto claim, where the chair has determined an open session may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the Airport Commission. Discuss strategy with respect to litigation regarding Walsh, where the chair has determined an open session may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the Airport Commission. To discuss strategy, clause 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining, where the chair has determined an open session may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the Airport Commission. Clause 3, to discuss strategy with respect to pursuing legal claims against the manufacturer of PFAS substances, where the chair has determined an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the Airport Commission. Clause 3, to discuss strategy with respect to potential legal claims against the airport for PFAS substances, where the chair has determined an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the Airport Commission, not to return to open session. That is my motion.
Second,
How do you vote, Ms. Topham? Mr. Aye? please?
aye.
Thank you. Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Mr. Gasparo?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. All
Thank
right.
you, Rich.
Mr. Chair,